Tariffs skyrocket. Rare earths vanish from global markets. The world's two biggest economies teeter on the edge of a trade war. China vows to fight. The US threatens 100% duties. Is this diplomacy or disaster? As Trump and Xi prepare to meet, the stakes couldn't be higher. China has signaled its readiness to confront the United States in a trade dispute after American President Donald Trump announced plans to impose an additional 100% tariff on Chinese goods. The announcement follows Beijing's introduction of new export controls on rare earths, a sector in which China holds a dominant global position, and comes as Washington prepares its own export restrictions on critical software starting November 1st. The escalation has raised concerns over the future of a potential meeting between Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea and rattled global markets. An unnamed spokesperson from China's Commerce Ministry emphasized that China's stance on trade and tariff disputes remains consistent.
On the matter of tariff wars and trade wars, China's position remains consistent. If you wish to fight, we shall fight to the end. If you wish to negotiate, our door remains open. The United States cannot simultaneously seek dialogue while threatening to impose new restrictive measures. This is not the proper way to engage with China.
China insists that its export controls on rare earths are lawful measures to safeguard national security and maintain stable global supply chains.
I want to reiterate that China's export control measures on rare earths and related items are lawful and legitimate actions to improve its export control system in accordance with laws and regulations. As a responsible major country, China consistently and firmly safeguards its national security and global common security. The regulation is not a ban on rare earths exports, and compliant applications will be granted licenses to jointly maintain the stability of global industrial and supply chains.
According to the Commerce Ministry, compliant applications for export licenses will continue to be granted. Senior expert He Weiwen from the Center for China and Globalization stressed that
additional tariffs as high as 100% are meaningless given the current state of bilateral trade. The U.S.'s threats and intimidation cannot resolve China-U.S. trade frictions, but only undermine the foundation of bilateral trade talks.
Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian reinforced Beijing's opposition to recent U.S. restrictions and sanctions.
Threatening high tariffs is not the right way to deal with China. The U.S. should correct its approach and act on the common understandings the two presidents reached in their phone calls. The two sides can and should address each other's concerns through dialogue and manage differences on the basis of equality, respect, and mutual benefit to keep bilateral ties on a steady, sound, and sustainable track. If the U.S. keeps refusing to change course, China will be firmly resolved in taking measures to safeguard its own legitimate rights and interests.
Despite mounting tensions, China reported resilient trade data for September, with exports rising 8.3% year-on-year, underscoring the country's capacity to navigate external pressures while continuing to safeguard its economic and strategic interests. Data showed that shipments to the United States, the world's largest consumer market, also picked up to reach $34.3 billion. Chinese goods currently face US tariffs of at least 30% under levies that Trump imposed, while accusing Beijing of aiding in the fentanyl trade, as well as unfair trade practices. China's retaliatory tariffs are currently at 10%. The United States and China have entered a new phase of their trade dispute, with both nations beginning to impose additional port fees on ocean shipping firms. The measures, effective October 14th, target vessels owned, operated, built, or flagged by the other country, marking the high seas as a growing front in the economic conflict between the world's two largest economies. China's Ministry of Transport outlined that US-linked vessels, including those with 25% or more US ownership, will face special port fees at their first port of entry, with charges capped at 5 voyages per year. Exemptions apply to Chinese-built ships and vessels entering Chinese shipyards solely for repairs. The fees will start at 400 yuan per net ton, rising annually through 2028. Ship owners must report vessel information to Chinese authorities prior to arrival, with non-compliance potentially barring port entry. The US is scheduled to begin collecting its own fees on October 14th, following investigations that found China employs unfair practices in the maritime and shipbuilding sectors. Analysts warn that the reciprocal measures could distort global freight flows. Athens-based Exclusive Shipbrokers Inc. described the situation as a tit-for-tat maritime taxation spiral.
This tit-for-tat symmetry locks both economies into a spiral of maritime taxation that risks distorting global freight flows. The weaponization of both trade and environmental policy signals that shipping has moved from being a neutral conduit of global commerce to a direct instrument of statecraft.
The escalating fees highlight the broader tension between trade policy and strategic competition on the high seas. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent criticized Beijing's approach, saying the export controls reflected weakness in China's economy and risked harming global supply chains.
This is a sign of how weak their economy is, and they want to pull everybody else down with them. Maybe there is some Leninist business model where hurting your customers is a good idea, but they are the largest supplier to the world. If they want to slow down the global economy, they will be hurt the most.
Markets initially reacted with volatility, but rebounded after Trump indicated that the United States wants to help China, not hurt it. Analysts caution that uncertainty remains high, particularly with the planned Trump-Xi meeting in South Korea now in question. Bessent added that Trump remains on track to meet Chinese leader Xi Jinping in South Korea later this month. The planned meeting comes amid renewed tensions over trade, following China's expansion of rare earth export controls and Trump's threat to impose triple-digit tariffs on Chinese goods. Bessent told Fox Business that substantial communications had taken place over the weekend and that US-China staff-level meetings would continue this week in Washington, alongside the World Bank and IMF annual gatherings. He emphasized that the 100% tariffs set for November 1st do not have to take effect, and that lines of communication between the two sides have reopened. Officials from both sides have shifted blame for the tensions onto one another, while highlighting the importance of safeguarding progress from previous negotiations. Despite the tensions, Trump praised Xi as a tough, smart man and a great leader during a recent interview, signaling his personal confidence in the bilateral relationship.
I'm meeting with Xi now when you go to Asia in a couple of weeks.
But you saw the statement I put out that he had a bad day.
Right.
And I think we're going to be fine with China. Look, I have a great relationship with President Xi. He's a very tough man. He's a very smart man. He's a great leader for their country. He's a great leader. And I have a great relationship with him. I think we'll get it set. I know what happened. I really understand what happened. And I'm not even saying he's wrong. But then we met him with something much tougher than what he did to us. Again, because of the tariffs, it's much tougher.